Hello ladies and gentlemen, and in last week's video I was in the front garden taking some pictures of some flowers. Now this is the first time I've really done that seriously. I did go and do some snowdrops using the same lens, in fact, a little earlier in the year, but this was the first time I'd really got incredibly close to flowers in order to take sort of smaller parts of them, and I think I did all right, but my favourite out of most of the images was actually this one we've got here. Although right now that's in its raw format, so in this video we're going to edit that. And what's different about this edit rather than most of the ones that we do is that I'm not going to rely on local adjustments, because actually I just don't think that I needed them when I was doing it. So what we've got here. I quite liked all of these images, but I also think that there was sort of too much colour into them. The flowers need to look delicate, and this didn't quite look as delicate as I thought I wanted it. So the first thing I'm going to do on this, in fact, is play around with our exposure. I want to just expose it just a little bit more. Just like that, because what we're going to end up doing is taking all of this down, so that boost in exposure early on is actually going to change the way that we're dealing with this. Now, I'm going to do something that I don't normally do on this as well. I'm going to change the white balance straight away. So I think I want something like this. I want to warm it up slightly, and I also want to add in a little bit more. It gives you sort of a +8 on the reds anyway, but I'm gonna increase that a little bit. Maybe there. That'll be right. Now we're going to take some of that color out in a minute anyway, so this'll all work. I think this will kind of be fine. Now let's go down to here. We'll pull our highlights down a little bit, but I'm not going to do what I normally do. Actually, I think I can push the highlights a bit on here. I'm only going to do it a little. Maybe to about there. And what I want this time, now normally I would close all the highlights down and open all the shadows up, but I wanted to do something a little bit different again. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a curve with these settings. So whilst we've got that there, we're going to pull our shadows down a little bit. There. Again, not very much, just enough. We're going to take our whites down. We'll do this a little bit more. And this is a technique I saw somebody doing, and I thought I'd like to try it. And so when I did try it, so you take this down an awful lot more, I thought, oh, that's a little bit interesting. I quite like it. I quite liked the way that was working. And you know, we're not going to do what we would normally do with an image. We're not going to add texture and dehaze it, because actually we'll add a bit more contrast into there later on. But I wanted to add traditional contrast. I don't want to add the dehazing contrast, because that's going to change the kind of the nature of the image. So right now, all I'm going to do is just push this clarity up a little bit. You see, again, you can see what's happening. You're kind of adding texture into it, but it's a different feel than the texture brush. And actually, if you're using Affinity Photo, like I was in Affinity Photo last time we did an edit, then you can actually follow this along, and the settings will be pretty similar, because we're using everything that you would have in Affinity Photo when we're doing this. Okay, vibrance and saturation I want to pull down. So we'll start off with the vibrance. Take that down a bit, because again, I think that, you know, flowers need to be delicate, and so I want to take some of that colour out just to give it that proper feel, if you see what I mean. I will come back, I think, to change some of the colours, but I'm going to do this using the HSL slider, because this is going to be an awful lot easier way of doing it. Now, what I really want for this image, for those shadows to be an awful lot flatter, because we're going to push some colour into the shadow. So I want to see it. I want to actually properly see it. I'm going to take the middle thing here, and we're just going to shift it along a touch. Again, you can see what this is doing. We're kind of lightening up the things there. I'm going to take this and pull that back down now. So we've almost got our S curve in there already, which is what we want. And then I'm going to do this, which raises the shadows. I love this. You don't need to do it a lot. In fact, that's possibly too much. But there you go. You just see the difference there between really dark shadows and this kind of nice kind of blend to the shadows. I just think it's a really nice kind of feel to the whole thing. And yeah, it's something that I quite like the look of. Okay, so this is where we're going to actually start playing with the saturation properly, and we're going to take individual color channels and change some of the saturation and possibly some of the luminance as well. And I'm going to start off here because what I think the reds in this, the purples in this, and the magentas in this are just too high. There's just too much. So I'm going to take this red down probably quite a long way. And look, you can start to see kind of the subtlety of the flower come out when you do that. That's what I wanted to get from here. That's what I wanted to get. We'll do a similar thing with the purples. Purples are only really at the shadows, but bring that down. It opens up the shadows of the flower, and more shadows in the flower makes it feel more delicate. And therefore, we get what is a more delicate flower out of the image. We'll do the same with the magentas as well. I think again, the majority of the thing is controlled on magenta, so I'm going to take this down. Not as much as the others, I think. Otherwise, we'll lose too much color, but a little bit, I think, is important. Now, because this is a Nikon camera, because this was shot during the day, I'm going to take out some of these greens. You might have heard the phrase Nikon green before, and that's because when you shoot in bright sunlight and you're using a Nikon camera, everything, the greens and yellows that you normally need to take out of the image, usually in the grass or something, and you'll go, why does the rest of this image look fine but the grass doesn't? So you can take those out. Yellows actually are fine on this, but I am going to push a little bit of orange into this. And you see what it'll do overall is just changing these colours here. So what we want is from this, which is a little bit flat, we're just going to push the oranges up there. It gives us a little bit of interest in the plant. So our eyes will be drawn to the light bits first, which are kind of the bits around here, and then to these orangey bits, and then to the darker bits around here. That's the plan. Anyway, okay, so let's take a look at some of the luminance as well, because as well as changing the colours, you can change the luminance, and that'll make things a bit different. Now I'm going to drop the luminance of the reds here a little bit, because it gives an impression of adding contrast without actually having to add any contrast. Again, we will push up our oranges because it just gives those little areas a little bit more of that kind of pastel-y kind of shade, which I quite like. I think that's it. I think that's all we're going to do with this. I am going to do some split toning on this. Now, what I thought I'd do with the split toning here is actually leave these highlights right in the center, so we're affecting kind of the center bit, the blues in here. There aren't many blues in this image, so this isn't going to give us much of a change, but we'll push a little bit of blue into the highlights here. And you can just start to see it coming along, and that's really what we're doing is adding in purple, because we're pushing blues into oranges, and that's some of the purple that we took out. We're kind of adding back, but much more subtly, so that we don't always see it. We'll bring this up a little bit as well. There we go, nice and simple. Okay, sharpening. I'll do what I normally do. And there, we'll bring that up to there. That looks about right. Okay, color's fine. We're going to remove chromatic aberration and enable lens correction. It doesn't do a damn thing with this lens because it's so good. And we're going to put a bit of a vignette on this as well. Okay, this is where we're going to put a lot of look and feel into the thing. And before we put the vignette on, I'm actually going to add in a little bit of grain. And the reason I wanted to do this again to give it a little texture. I'm not going to do a lot again, just about that, and we're going to push this, the size of the grain, because obviously the size of the grain makes a difference as well, up a bit, and we're going to push this up a bit as well to give us quite a rough grain, but you won't see a lot of that because actually we're going to take that out when we put the crop on, and I'm actually going to give it quite a quite a deep crop. There you go. And added a lot of the contrast back in, so this is why we were starting to take some of that contrast out in the other bits, because you want this to be nice and subtle. Now I'll change the midpoint because I think this is quite nice, but it's too much. So we'll pull up this midpoint here, so that we're opening up the iris on the vignette. Again, I don't normally do an awful lot of this. We'll push the roundness down as well. Maybe not that much. Again, see what the roundness does. It changes the way that it the actual sort of shadow of the vignette appears. And we're going to take our feather and take that all the way up, or a good portion of the way up, because we want this again to be a nice subtle image. And that's pretty much it, although I think I want to add a bit of contrast into here. I'm gonna just push this up just a little bit as well. There we go. We'll put some contrast up into there. There we go. And there we have our finished image. Hope you like it. Again, I wanted to bring out some of the subtleties of the flower, and I think I've managed to do that. I hope I've managed to do that anyway. That was this particular video. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's a bit of a change for me, first of all, to use the HSL sliders. I don't do that very often. And secondly, to use an image where I'm not doing a whole bunch of local adjustments to the image as well, which, you know, I love local adjustments, but sometimes you just don't need them. Anyway, do let me know in the comments below what you would have done differently, if you would have done anything differently. Do let me know what you think of the image as well. And until next time, thanks ever so much for watching. Now, don't forget, we have coming up this week, we've got another weekly chat where we're just going to talk about a random photography topic. We've got a business chat on Friday, so if you tune in for those, make sure you don't miss them by clicking on the subscribe button, then clicking on the little bell icon at the end and choosing all notifications. And that way, anytime I release a video, you'll get told. At least that's the idea. Now, next week, I will be continuing my macro photography journey, and I'm going to be taking a picture of this. Until then, thanks very much for coming along. Don't forget to keep staying safe, and well, I'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.